Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of the Accra Indie Film Festival, Conversations with the Filmmakers. Today, we have a beautiful set of people who are going to speak to us about their documentary film. I don't want to give anything away. I'm just going to allow them to introduce themselves. But before that, I'd like to read their bios briefly so that we get a sense of who they are. And so I'll just go ahead now. And so the documentary is the Ebony Rockers Mural, and we have here Richard David, who is the director of the documentary. And Richard is a multimedia artist who has worked in script development at the high end of the British film industry. And in the past, he has written and produced documentaries, dramas, and short films. And he works as a voluntary creative consultant for Montaj Media Village, who produced the film that we are going to be speaking on today. And we also have on the call, we have Don John as well. And he has been working in the field of race and diversity for over 40 years, having spent 10 years in HM Treasury in Whitehall. He then moved to Southampton to work as a youth and education officer for Southampton Council for race equality, working with Black and Asian youth with specific reference to the criminal justice system and racism in the education service. So, director of Don John Consultants for over 30 years and has provided consulting services for other local authorities, police services, the Army, Navy, you name it. And he's also a producer for the film about the Ebony Rocks, which is the one we're going to be speaking on today, which has recently won or had been awarded the best music film at the Portobello Film Festival. So this is just a brief on the two individuals that we have here today. So I'll go ahead and start first of all with Mr. Don John. So you worked in production with this particular documentary film, and I'll just like to get a sense of your interest in the Ebony Rocks and what exactly what informed you to actually put this documentary together or work with Richard on this documentary.
Well, it all started 40 years ago when I formed the band with a bunch of other guys, a band called Ebony Rockers. We won a national competition, and we were awarded a contract with EMI Records, and we went on tour, supported Still Pulse, Linton Kwesi Johnson, a number of other people. And we were kind of local heroes, as it were. And we were all young black men. And one way for us to express ourselves was through our music. And 40 years ago, that happened. And more recently, the city, Southampton, recognized the importance of what we did. And they decided to put together a mural in the middle of Southampton, a huge mural, making us look bigger than life, as it were. And this mural was erected in the middle of town. And again, we were grateful that the city recognized what we did because we were seen as kind of local heroes by local black youth at the time, but also heroes in terms of the kind of things we were saying about the condition of young black men.
Amazing, amazing stuff. And for you, Richard, how is it like collaborating with Don John for this project, and how did you both then work together for this particular documentary?
Well, I've known Don for 40 years anyway, so it's like the band were all friends of mine when we were growing up. One of them was my girlfriend. So when the chance, me and Don have worked together on all sorts of things over the years, different projects and in different areas of the community sort of side of things. But obviously, we both started to work for Montaj Media in a consultancy role to help them with their productions and exploring ideas for films and funding. And then this thing came up about the Ebony Rockers were going to have this tribute mural. And we quickly thought it would be an idea, we should speak to the people behind who were funding it and see if we could get a bit of funding. to make a tribute film. So we literally, Don set up a meeting, we went and met them. They responded to it very positively, and they commissioned us for a small amount of money, and it was supposed to be a 3 or 4 minute film just about the mural. But then I thought, no, you can't do justice to the band and what the real story signifies for young Black people at the time and the community. So I just decided to write a 15-minute short film, and we make it for the same money. So that's what we decided to do, and we did it.
Awesome, awesome. And when you say funding, or when you say seeking funding for the project, what was the process like, and who did you speak to?
Well, it was literally funded. The same people that funded the construction of the mural. It's a thing called Go Southampton, which basically, supports Southampton community projects and energies, a local business type setup, promoting the cultural side of Southampton, etc. And so we went to them, and I just literally submitted a budget for £1,500 on the grounds it would be a 3 or 4 minute film. And they agreed to that. But like I said, really, with what then happened and the amount of resources, it should have been like a £15,000 film in the editing time. But it was for our friends, and Don was the manager. And for me, it was just a labor of love,
Indeed, a labor of love. And we usually hear these stories from many indie filmmakers or just filmmakers in general, how sometimes you don't necessarily have all the funds together, but then you just have to make the magic. And I mean, it's been selected at the Accra Indie Film Festival and won an award. So maybe Don John, you can enlighten me about the particular award that you won and for the music documentary. Just tell us about that and what the experience was like.
Well, we've won awards all over the world, actually, for the film. But I think we were really inspired when we actually were nominated for an award from the mother country, because there's nothing better than getting an award from your peers. And receiving an award from the Accra Indie Film Festival nomination was really something that we were overwhelmed with. We thought it was fantastic. And I mean, my background is West African anyway, because my family are from Sierra Leone. But clearly I've worked with a lot of Caribbean youth, and this film was really such an opportunity for young Black people to express their feelings about, race, identity, the condition of Black people in the 1980s. And, I guess some people may recognize the way it was for Black people during the kind of Windrush generation period. And I guess that writing and performing this music about how people felt was a kind of a cathartic experience. It helped us to be able to say, this is what is happening to us. And I guess many people who traveled from the Caribbean, from Africa to the West, also experienced a very similar kind of condition. And having songs like Struggle, Stepping Out, and Prison Gates were kind of telltale titles for what our experiences were all about. And getting this nomination from Ghana, from Accra, for us, we're overjoyed, and we're so pleased that we're able to, take that experience back to where, our forebears came from, to say a little bit about the way it was at that time. And also, I guess, to recognize whether things have changed as much as people think they've changed.
Right, right. And congrats to you again for being selected for the Accra Indie Film Festival 2023. And it's happening from the 31st of July to the 5th of August. So if you're watching this now, don't forget, come around and watch many amazing films. Yes, so I'd like to get into directing or filmmaking for you, Richard, as a journey. What has been the journey for you as a filmmaker, and has this been something that you've done all your life?
No, I was extremely lucky, actually. when I was goodness me, when I was in my late 30s, I, through a complete fluke, going to a writing, a night school doing writing and everything like that. A guy who was the chairman of this group of writers read my work, which was just my rough freestyle essays. And he took me to dinner one night and he said, look, I have a friend who's a film director. He's just going to graduate from the National Film, and he's been given £1 million to make a film because he's the best film student at the National Film. He's looking for new writers to work with. I've read your stuff, and I think he would like your stuff. I think you'd get on with him. Now, I'd never written a film script in my life. The next minute, I'm being introduced to this guy. So I start to get to know him, and then lo and behold, the film that he made won Best Academy Award for a student film at the Oscars.
Wow.
For a 60-minute film. And he literally phoned me up that night and said, have you seen us? Anyway, to cut a long story short, within about 6 months of that, he was being courted by all the film companies, and he went to work for Working Title Feature Films in London, which is the biggest, sort of most famous European production film company. Did Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, all sorts of famous movies. And then one day he called me and said, look, there's a script. There's a script about a young football team. I think you'd be brilliant for it. And he literally, over a few weeks, took me through on a crash course of how to write a film screenplay. I had to write a 5,000-word essay for the head of this huge company. He liked what I did. And I literally went right in at the top end of the British film industry on £1 million development projects, writing drafts of screenplays. And I did that kind of for 4 years. And in the end, I was rewriting a lot of famous writers and people, some very famous writers. And it was fantastic. And in that 4 years, I learned a lot of the craft, and I was watching top level directors and proper top level producers, casting. I did a lot of work with casting directors, but the writing side of it in particular, I accelerated. I'd always been good freestyle writer, but I learned to write scripts properly. I knew how to write. I learned how to write a 3-act film, whether it's a short film or a full-length film. I learned the classical drama stuff, reflecting from like the Greek and the Roman stuff and everything. And I just went from there. And I did that for 4 years. Then they ripped me off with an idea I put into the company that they turned down. And a year later, I see it being made into a $20 million American movie. So I was very disillusioned by that. But that was what happens in the film industry. So then I left, and then I sort of started doing it more in our home city. Big project with Don in 2001, which was again involved a lot of very young Black people and Black actors and everything. And by then I'd done my first full-length documentary about World War II and the Normandy beaches. And it's just, from then on. But that's how I started. I kind of started at the top end, and it's been a steady downhill slope. But no, I'm still making films. But I was very lucky. I got thrown in at the very deep end, and I had to learn a hell of a lot very quickly.
Well,
I also learned that it's a very tough, cutthroat industry.
Yes. I don't even know the words to put to it, because I was just going to speak on some of the challenges of indie filmmakers, or generally filmmakers all over the world, producers or whatever industry we find ourselves. Basically, in the creative industry, there are so many issues that are very, should I say, very commonplace, because even if I'm speaking with someone from Russia or from Ghana, from the UK, the US, every single person has something similar. And for you just mentioning that particular incident of, you know, your intellectual property was taken, and then right now there was really nothing you could do about it. I would like to speak to Don about that. What are some of the measures that can be put in place? Because I know you've done a bit of some legal work, and maybe you'll be best to speak to it in some sort of way. For instance, if there's an indie filmmaker watching this, and then maybe they have the idea to pitch to someone, and just how can they protect themselves so that situations, even though things will still happen, but situations like this hopefully can be avoided for posterity.
Well, we realised from a very early period that we had to take control of our own destiny, which means that if we were operating with major filmmakers, we knew that our narrative would not be the narrative that they would want to pursue. So in the 90s, we put together a group called the Black and Asian Video Panel, which basically was our own production company. And we started making our own films about the subject matters that we chose, with our own Black directors, Black cinematographers, Black presenters. And for the very first time in Southampton, we actually showed a film which was completely populated directorially by Black people. Never had been done before. The film was called The Colour of Love. And it looked at the relationship between Black and white people and what were the issues surrounding that. And it was really successful. And but I think what it did was to motivate Black people to, I guess, to take, you know, their own futures in their own hands and not to rely too much on other people. And then we made another film called Sisters, Voices of Black Women, about the way in which Black women and their relationships with Black men. So we chose the subject matters. And I think that if you're beholden to a major organization, you will always have to give a little bit of yourself and to a certain extent compromise what you do. And we know these days it's very hard to get involved in the film industry, and legally we've got to determine ourselves how much do we want to compromise what we do in association with other people. And I think that, you know, making this film with Richard, the Ebony Rockers Mural, we basically, because we were basically doing it for nothing film-wise, we could actually do and say what we wanted to say. So in that sense, we had full control. But I think we would rather do something with a smaller budget that we had control of than something with a massive budget that we had no control over, either in terms of its content or indeed its distribution. So I guess my big advice would be, let's take control of our destiny. Let's take control of what it is that we're actually filming in the first place and what we want to say in the filming of it. And we made several films over the years which have actually talked about that. We made a film called Shadism, The Politics of Complexion, which a lot of people don't want to talk about. But even in the Black community, they don't want to talk about it. So we actually made that film. We shared it out. It got shown on local TV in terms of excerpts from it on an arts program. But I think that by taking control of what we do, we can actually then decide what it is that we want to actually make films about. And that would be my biggest recommendation when we talk about Black filmmakers and how we move forward.
All right. Thank you so much for that piece. I don't know if you'd like to add something, Richard. It seemed like you wanted to.
I would say this. I'm just completing a film which a full-length film which I've been making for 2 years, which is a 2-hour documentary about the role that music plays in the West in the fight against racism and fascism and right-wing politics. Now, that was shot in America, in Britain, in Ireland. But I knew, as Don says right away, you know, I knew that if I'd gone down traditional avenues of funding for the film I wanted to make there, I would have struggled. I would have had to be probably presenting a film that wasn't quite really what I was going to be presenting, if you get my meaning. So I had to find, I talked to Montaj and they were prepared to put up resources. And then I had to find a guy who is a friend of mine and who has a great, puts money into cultural projects and things and everything. He's in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. And I had to speak to him about, would he be prepared to trust me on this film and fund it as an executive producer? And he agreed, and we went forward that way. And I think it's very important whenever filmmakers can, retaining that control that Don says, so that you get your own vision, you're not compromised. Obviously, it's nice if you do receive nice budget money, but with budgets and with commercial investment and everything, always come the inevitable questions of compromise, commercial aspects, from tailoring for markets, etc., etc. Self-control is always the best way. And I think that goes for filmmakers across the world. I think it's a general principle, especially if you're coming from a community-orientated perspective.
Absolutely.
Whenever you can, get it in your hands and keep it in your hands.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So take charge of your destiny, and whenever you can, keep the content, keep the story.
The destiny in your hand. Yeah.
Destiny in your hands. Thank you so much for that. Very interesting things to note about the film. But then I would like to ask Don, if tell us something interesting about the band and what's, something that we can relate to, because I mean, for me, I'm in the new generation, and I'll probably know the more recent bands that exist now, but maybe not the Ebony Rockers. But then tell us something interesting about them.
Well, Ebony Rockers were a bunch of 16, 17, 18-year-old boys, and we used to practice in a boys' club, and in the basement of my flat, which was covered with egg boxes to soundproof. And interestingly enough, one of the guys in the band, the bass player, George David, is the father of the famous international superstar Craig David that some people may have heard of.
Yes. Oh, amazing. That's very, very interesting. Wow. Obviously, I mean, he comes from a background of music, and that explains his beautiful love for music and his beautiful voice as well. And Richard, is there anything that you'd like to add? I mean, I know you said you also knew some of the band members as well.
Yeah, I knew them all. But Craig's dad, I've known Craig's dad since we were teenagers. But I live, the block of flats where I'm sat in now talking to you is the block of flats that Craig grew up in as a very young boy and lived in right up until the time when he became famous. He lived here in this block of flats.
Wow,
his mother carried on living here for a long, long time. Even when he became famous, she lived here for years. And in the end, he persuaded her and he brought her a lovely big house, and she moved out. But she didn't want to leave her roots, But yeah, Craig grew up. Craig's dad was in the band, and I live in the same block that Craig grew up in, which is a nice little way of dovetailing this film.
Yeah. And also, Richard has failed to mention that he made a film about Craig David and his time here called Silent Soul. That went down very well with a number of key national actors in it, including somebody from EastEnders as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, 2 from EastEnders, 2 famous actors. Yeah. It was based on Craig's childhood and him wanting to be a pirate radio DJ. It was a drama, and it was made for ITV, and it was a great project because we managed to get the funding to do workshops for inner city school children right the way through the summer. And lots of them came in, and they were taught by industry professionals, camera stuff, makeup, basic acting stuff and everything. So we ran, as the film was being made for the summer, we were able to provide all these training courses for very young people from the inner city who normally would not get any kind of entry into that type of environment. And this is the type of thing that me and Don are always, these are the kind of energies that we look to explore. This is what it's really about for us.
Yeah, yeah. The beauty of filmmaking, being able to impact people's lives. It seems like it's just moving photos on the screen, but no, it has the beauty of bringing people together. And
It's more than that.
I would really encourage you listeners to come to the screening, come and watch the beautiful film, the Ebony Rockers Mural, amongst many others. So we've given you a teaser, just a little teaser there, and there's so much more packed in the film that you'd want to see. So you definitely come around and watch. So I'll just bring the conversation to an end now. But before that, I'll just like to maybe leave it on a lighter note. So I'll start with Don. If you are not making films, producing, doing all the serious creative stuff, what would we see Don do?
Well, I love music, for instance. I mean, I do a radio show every week, and I guess part of my therapy for all the serious stuff that I do is putting my soul and reggae show together, which I do love because, in fact, part of my show is also social content. So I have sort of references to social, political issues within songs, and I try and choose music that relates to some of that, social and political consciousness. We have a lot of great young Black artists like Wizkid and Jay Huss and Burna Boy, and some of their stuff is kind of quite political. So I kind of weave that into my show together with some of the old school, some of the Motown stuff and sort of the old soul and R&B, Otis Redding, and some of that stuff that goes way back. And equally with reggae, in which I go, again, of course, reggae is almost totally political in what it has to say, apart from the love songs, which I've got a little bit of political content. So my therapy is music all the time, and it's fun. And apart from that, I also relax by going out there and speaking my mind. And luckily enough, because I'm my own boss, I can speak my mind and I don't have to answer to anybody.
Yeah, you don't have to be afraid that Monday when you're entering the office, your boss is going to be like, see me in my office or something,
Yeah, exactly. So I've only got to answer to myself, Alice, and that I do.
Right. And Richard, what will you be doing if you're not making your 2-hour documentaries?
Strangely enough, quite similar actually, because I mean, over in that you can't see them, but over on that side of the room are shelves and boxes up to the roof of literally thousands and thousands of American 60s and 70s soul music singles, records. And so that's my great love musically. And obviously reggae music as well, but that is primarily that's what I collect. But I also do a monthly radio show in London, and it's a show where we have quite famous, renowned musical faces come on, and we do a 2-hour show with anecdotes about their careers and then what they're doing nowadays. But we include a half-hour of a state of the nation political roundup where we look at all the things which are happening in Britain politically with the government and everything. So it's kind of like, it's very similar really to like musically based, but with that kind of social consciousness and political level built. That's just the kind of people we are, I guess, really.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to change now, Don, are we?
I don't think so.
So it's safe to say the two of you were united by the love for music, and film also became a byproduct of that love. And so it just shows how beautiful creativity is. It's linked in so many ways, from music to film, and who knows what next it will be. We're hopeful to see more projects from you both, and then hopefully in the future we'll get a chance to meet in person, maybe come for your show, because I also love music, but maybe not the reggae, but then I do listen to a lot of soul music. So music as well. Yes, and it's been a wonderful conversation with you both, and thank you so much for your time. We just want to keep this as brief as possible, but then yes, I guess whoever watches this has gotten to see the crux of the whole matter. 31st of July to the 5th of August. Come around, people. You have to come and watch the Ebony Rockers Mural because it is definitely a must watch. And who knows, you might be inspired to also work on your own project as you come and watch all the beautiful screenings of films that we have. So I'll just like to say thank you so much to you, Richard, for joining us today, and then also to you, Dawn, for joining us. And we'll be back with another exciting conversation with another set of filmmakers from across the world who have their film screening at this year's festival. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you. An absolute honor.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.